Passed by your school the other day.
We're live and now recording.
Thanks, Katie. Can we start off with roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Antonio,
Here.
Mr. Badger,
Here.
Mr. Bleefeld,
Here.
Ms. Chiavacci,
He's here.
she's here on Zoom, Mr. Frank,
Here.
Mrs. Heyman,
Here.
Ms. Karianikis, here, Dr. Morris,
Here.
Mrs. Ginsburg,
Here.
Harley Meltzer.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent, and 1 student board rep this evening.
Thanks, Katie. All right, if Brooke, Charlotte, and Fiona could join me up here, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. They're going to lead us this evening. Thank you so much for your help, ladies, and welcome everyone here this evening, especially our Bluebell guests who are joining us. If you take a look at our agenda, you'll see first the list of our prior meetings. We met on January 30th for a work session, February 6th for a regular public board meeting, February 13th for a finance committee budget workshop, February 21st for communications and board racial equity oversight committees. The 22nd, the MCIU board of directors met. February 27th was another work session. And March 1st was a communications committee meeting. Then we list out our upcoming meetings. On March 13th, we'll have a policy committee meeting. The following evening, we'll have both a board curriculum and technology committee meeting, followed by a finance committee budget workshop. On March 21st, so you'll note in the agenda it says 20th, it'll actually be the 21st at 7 p.m. We're gonna have a communications committee meeting. The day prior on the 20th will be another board racial equity oversight committee meeting. The 27th is our next work session, and April 10th will be our next regular public board meeting. Now we'll move on to our presentations for the evening. First, we have a new staff introduction. Jim? Oh, right.
Thank you very much. We're excited to introduce Brian Russell. He's going to give a quick background and let us know, but we're very excited that he is here, and he has already jumped in and is already very knowledgeable of our buildings and is going to get even more so in the coming weeks and months. Right?
Good evening. Okay, good now. Good evening, Dr. Crisfield, President Ginsburg, and members of the board. I'm honored to stand here today as the appointed Director of Buildings and Grounds. I'd like to take an opportunity to express my gratitude to you and to convey my excitement about working with this great administrative staff you have here at Wissahickon. I'm confident that together we can continue the great work that has already been done in the district. As the Director of Buildings and Grounds, my primary responsibility is that our students and staff have safe, clean, and well-maintained facilities for learning and teaching. I look forward to working with the administration, the building and facility staff to make certain that our buildings maintain the highest level of excellence. I'm committed to making meaningful contributions to both the district and the community at large. And I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here and look forward to continuing work, and go Trojans.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, and welcome to Wissahickon. We're really excited to work with you. Do any of my fellow board members have any questions, thoughts for Brian? Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, nice to meet you. Where are you coming to us from?
I've spent a majority of my career with Pennsbury School District down in Bucks County, about 25 years or so as a maintenance electrician, and then moved into management there. My last district was Ben Salem School District. I was there for almost a year and a half as a supervisor of operations and transportation.
Great. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Well, I know you got to tour our facilities over the past couple of days.
Yes.
Any thoughts about particular projects you might be interested in pursuing or recommending to the board?
Well,
And I'm going to be grabbing the mic right now.
Okay, maybe you can't answer that.
So he's reviewed the 5-year plan, and we can certainly sit down with him and, work through whatever projects that we have going on. And with any new director of facilities, he'll have the ability to talk to the board about reprioritizing whatever projects we would have.
Thanks for jumping in, Wade. All right, any other questions or thoughts? All right, well, again, thank you so much for joining us.
thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll move on now to our student presentation with Bluebell Elementary. Ms. Farlow?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Angela Barlow, the principal of Bluebell Elementary, and I am joined today by Fiona, Charlotte, and Brooke. These are members of our student council, and we're going to talk to you about some of the amazing things that are happening at Bluebell as it relates to our STEM and makerspace. So first, let's talk about what is STEM. It is a course of science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's lots of hands-on learning. We are very, very proud of the direction of our STEM program. As a matter of fact, it has grown by leaps and bounds under the guidance and direction of our librarian and STEM teacher, Jackie Echeverria. So we have actually more STEM now than we've ever had. So it's really an opportunity for students to develop those 21st century learning skills and those SEL skills. So we're talking about self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsibility, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. And these students are going to tell you much more about that. So when we asked, why did you like STEM so much? What did you tell us?
It's a fun way to get every kid, even ones who don't love math or reading, into school. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing the math or the reading.
Sometimes you can pick your own path based on your own interests.
You can get your creative side working, and it lets you express your ideas because it is student-led and student-centered.
So our students are learning the 4 C's of STEM. Those 4 C's are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So when we talk about critical thinking, and this comes from our students, these are their words, thinking about what comes next or what might happen, working hard to support the team, and making our brains sweat. What about communication?
It means talking with your group so you can make a plan, staying on topic and goal-focused, being kind and respectful, and being open-minded.
Thank you. And what about collaboration?
Collaboration means including everyone, using other people's ideas, individual planning and group planning, and seeing everyone's perspectives and bringing other ideas to the table.
And creativity?
Creativity is trying to find different ways to solve the problem. Thinking outside the box, using as much of your brain as possible, and trying original ideas.
So we practice all of those things. If you just look up at the smart board or at the board, our program runs from kindergarten to 5th grade. So even our smallest students are getting some STEM learning. They're learning about what is STEM and what is a makerspace, just learning how to manipulate all of the different resources that we have. But all groups, you'll see, have engineering, they have an hour of code, they're working with robots, and they're connecting to other curriculum.
In kindergarten, these are kids playing with blue box. Right now, they are trying to make Red Riding Hood get to her grandma's house.
In 2nd grade, they did the pumpkin platforms. Their goal was to make a stand that would hold a real pumpkin.
In 4th grade, they made foil boats, which they tried to hold as much dominoes as they can without them sinking. And the record was 13 dominoes.
And in 5th grade, they are trying to do breakout boxes. This helped them learn about decimals in a soccer-themed breakout.
So now that we've presented, we're going to see if you can try the 4 C's. And so, yeah.
Let's see you try the 4 C's. We want you to break out.
What's a breakout box, you might ask? Well, it's similar to an escape room, a fun way to get your brain working, but it also helps you to practice other skills. And it's a good way to learn how to work together, even if you sometimes have trouble getting along.
Can you work out together to solve a 4-digit lock? We have a problem. We are stuck in Zoom land. Someone clicks the wrong button and now we can either knock it in or we can knock it out of Zoom. Some of our cameras are off and our microphones are muted. We need to help each other get through the confusion, work together, sort it out, and break out of the Zoom. If anybody needs any help, there are hints that we can use.
So we are going to put you into groups of 2 to 3. We're going to give you a breakout box with some instruction. We want to see your brain sweat. Ready? Okay.
Hi, it's Rosette. I just want to say I'm sorry I'm not there for this. This looks like fun.
There's absolutely no pressure, but it only took our 5th graders 5 minutes to break out of the box. We have a winner. Someone has broken out. Open the box. And there should be a little prize in there for you too. Collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity. Yeah. 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. You can do it. You can do it. They broke out. There are critical thinkers. Oh, we have enough. Okay, teams, I'm very sorry. Here's your, oh, you almost have it? I will give you a hint. It was a very good year. It was a very good year. That's the best hint I can give you. A very good year. Right? Maybe. It was a very good year. Yay! No time. Last group, getting communication and collaboration. And maybe there was a problem with the lock. Could have been a problem. It's the lock that gave you a problem. Yeah. Ladies. Think about it. Thank you all so much. And you can come by Bluebell almost any day and see our students working on STEM. It's part of our regular program. Any questions? You had a very good question, Mrs. Hay, that I think that Jackie wanted to answer for you. Didn't you ask about the box? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Mr. Coleman? Yes. Can you ask that question again?
So I was asking, buy it as a kit.
So the boxes come from a company called Breakout EQ, and that comes with just the box and then a print basic box. They usually have about 5 to 6 blocks on the box for each group. But the games themselves, Breakout EQ usually publishes for free on their website. You can print all the materials, but there is also like crowdsourcing from other teachers who created their own games or students.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. And we had to actually ask for a clue. It was very tough. So I can't believe students are doing this. Wow, that's awesome. Did anyone else have any comments or questions?
Just thank you. This was amazing and 4 C's all the way.
I did enjoy also this week coming to see your class. It was awesome. Like I had no idea Legos could do what you were doing. That was pretty amazing. All right, well, if there's no other questions, we do always like to get pictures at the end. So David and Paul, I don't believe you've gone yet, right? For pictures? All right, so you're up.
Jim, was it your team that broke out the box first?
I would like to report that there was a lot of collaboration over here, not much communication though. That's something we're gonna work on.
Yeah. Impressive.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you didn't need any clues.
Okay, all right.
Thank you again. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. It won't be this entertaining.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But you're certainly welcome to stay. If not, if you leave, make sure you take some snacks on your way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to move on to our SEL quarterly update.
Thank you. We are so grateful to have this evening with us Ms. Keziah Latour, our Director of Equity and Cultural Responsiveness, to share an update with the board and the community about what our schools are doing and what our district is doing to support students' development with social and emotional learning. And Ms. Latour, what an act to follow. It's always tough. Anyone who has to follow the student presentation is a little tough to follow, but we are really excited and looking forward to learning about the SEL update. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to share a SEL March update with you. I think the best thing that happened just now was what you saw with Bluebell Elementary. When we're talking about social and emotional learning, we're looking at the communication, the collaboration, critical thinking, and so forth. All of that is a part of the social and emotional learning piece. So if anything's in action, that was it in action. So I'm so happy that I'm following their lead. So as we look at the slide here, I just wanted to highlight our district vision because it is that which guides us. Like in the work that we're doing as a district, we're committed to ensuring that we have a learning community where all students and staff feel a sense of belonging and are inspired to engage and excel to their fullest potential. And when they're engaged and they're excelling to their fullest potential, you get what we saw today in that room, that energy, that positivity, and that meaningful learning taking place. We have a self-steering committee. That self-steering committee is comprised of members from K through 12. We have school counselors and district leaders a part of this committee, as well as our teachers, and they play a very active role in helping to guide the work that we're doing with social and emotional learning. Their input and voices are very important and powerful in the direction that we're going in terms of our SEL work. We had the opportunity to hear from our Bluebell principal. Mrs. Farlow was excellent in highlighting for us our social emotional learning competencies, and they're listed here just for our awareness. Again, today we're going to talk about the district-wide themes. We're also going to dive into what's happening in the classroom because it's social emotional learning taking place. And so when we're looking at self-awareness and that social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, we're seeing how it plays out in active academic learning. We want our students to thrive academically, and we know how core these are in helping them to acquire the skills that they need to be successful. In short, the three main things that we're looking at with social emotional learning is that we're helping to create spaces where our students and staff understand one another, where they can connect with others and obviously achieve goals that they have established. There's much research that supports social emotional learning and the benefits of it. I always think it's so important to dive into what staff members are saying, specifically our teachers and our principals in the building. So here we see that when we're looking at our social emotional learning, we have an emphasis on how it's embedded in terms of the self strategies in our curriculum. And that's where we want to see it because, again, we want our students to thrive academically. In terms of our principal at the middle school, highlighting again, this is something that is not isolated to a space or a curriculum. It's across all content areas. And so I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to lift that up. There are other staff members who have commented on the benefits of social emotional learning. Again, one thing that's really important is creating that welcoming, inviting, and encouraging classroom environment that will cultivate community for students so they can thrive. And that's something that we are very intentional about. In terms of focusing on effort and growth, using that growth mindset, we're also looking at the wonderful reflection opportunities that we can provide students as they continue to grow in their learning. So what are we doing? Again, it's March. I had the opportunity to speak with you in December. We're continuing with a lot of the efforts that we noted in December. So again, developing an intentional K-12 self-focus is important, making sure that we're focusing on our district-wide monthly theme days, continuing with restorative practice training and providing social emotional learning training for support staff, ensuring that, of course, we're offering more support to new students in the district and continuing with our practices in place. So for our February Professional Development Day, we had the opportunity in the morning to really dive into introducing social emotional learning and trauma-informed practices to our support staff. For our professional staff, we had trauma-informed practices as well. It's almost like a part 2 to the introduction. They had the introduction last year. And so this year we focused on looking at the signs of ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences that take place. And then also during the second half of the morning, diving into curriculum work, focusing on equity and representation. And that's really focusing on teachers collaborating and communicating about the curriculum to ensure equity and representation of people, places, events, voices, and perspectives of our curriculum. So we are continuing, as I noted, with our district self themes. We had the opportunity in September through December to really focus on our belonging, with pride in October, gratitude in November, and giving back in December. As we continue to dive into our district self themes, a lot of the themes will be highlighted based on some of the actions that different schools have done. So these are the themes here that I'm noting now. And again, this was designed by our committee, our self-steering committee members. So Mrs. Farlow was here with her students today to speak to some of the wonderful things they're doing with social emotional learning in the classroom. Some other things to highlight here. They had a staff and student goal setting that took place, really recognizing the goals and hard work of both. They also completed gratitude charts and recorded acts of kindness and had self-strategy PD training that took place in the afternoon at their building level. For Lower Gwinnett, again, working collaboratively and communicating about what's needed in the classroom to further help them in their craft. They designed a staff cell resource hub, and this is through their Lower Gwinnett OneNote notebook that they have in place. The other piece is their Sunshine Committee, still focusing on building staff relationships. We know how important it is to focus on the social emotional well-being of our staff. That translates into the well-being of our students and what they do with them. Abby Cooley was highlighted most recently with her diligent work with our second grade students, again, looking at STEM and critical thinking. So it's wonderful to see that she's working diligently with our students to foster that critical thinking that's so essential in the work that they're doing. At Shady Grove, we had the opportunity to focus on several themes, caring and goal setting in January, concept of fairness in February, respect, kindness, and relationship and recognition of students. So again, looking at the efforts of Shady Grove, they really prioritized the characteristic of caring and paired it with their goal setting. And as a school goal, they were showing that how much they cared for others, and their leadership team, that's their student leadership team, came up with the idea of creating and donating placemats to the local senior living homes to bring joy to people during meal times. So a lot of creative thinking and community efforts that are being taken place. At Stony Creek Elementary, they created a February Tree of Kindness, and they had a guest speaker come in to speak to students about kindness and inclusion. Again, looking at the themes that we have in place, the district is making sure that these efforts are happening building-wide as well as in the classroom. At the middle school, there was an opportunity to really dive into the technology educational classrooms and highlight student accomplishments. There are special segments that are provided that gives opportunities for students to produce videos based on relationships, empathy. As a school-wide project, there was also an opportunity for them to look at the world through another's perspectives. In looking at some of the donations and contributions that they're making at Maddie Dixon Food Cupboard, we have them collecting uneaten fruit and vegetables and donating those items. We also had the opportunity to see our middle school sixth graders work in their gifted class. They focused on sending postcards with their dreams of the future and vision of life in space. So that was something else to note. And we were lucky to have some student finalists participate in the PA Invention Convention. And there they designed different apps like Send a Smile app and Medi Tracker and so forth. And these were our eighth graders who really shined. We also had a third grader who participated as well and was a finalist too. At the high school, we're continuing with our efforts with making sure the social and emotional learning is embedded in the health PE curriculum. We have our Space Period, which again is an opportunity for students to collaborate and connect with one another. Classroom learnings are taking place, and as you can see here, we have our students really working diligently in their physics class, collaborating, and here they're focusing on the work that they're doing in terms of gravitational potential energy and kinetic energy and so forth. We also have our students in the upper right corner looking at their graphic novels. They have the opportunity with their English teacher to focus on a formal essay and then to cite both textual and visual evidence to support their argument, which also segued into a debate. And then what was interesting, they made connections to history using this as a platform. We also had students in the upper left corner there working together to support other students. So this was our WHS National Honor Society and STARS tutoring programs partnering together with extended learning time, volunteers, to provide additional support for students to offer that tutoring when needed. So again, this is our high school students working together to ensure that learning is taking place not only for themselves in the classroom, but also supporting others with that learning. For service projects, something I highlighted throughout, we're dedicated to the service projects that we're doing. This is actually a picture of our Shady Grove Elementary fourth graders. They had lots of fun participating in a service learning project. They were able to fill bags with warm supplies and donate them to individuals who are displaced. And so in looking at the service projects, this is something that we're continuing to do as a social emotional learning steering committee as well. So here we have our leadership team. We participate in monthly equity leadership learning sessions, which is an opportunity for us to continue our learning and to also focus on social emotional learning wellness. And so here's our team gathered together, really focusing on some problems of practice and reading literature. And this took place during Read Across America. So we're reading and leveraging the literature to advance our work that we're doing for our staff and students. And so this is our literature leadership team at the heart of the work. What will we do? Well, we're going to continue to work on what we've been doing. And March 10th is a great day. It's a Celebrate Cell Day. So we're going to participate in that, similar to what we did last year. We plan community service opportunities. We're going to continue to do that and create cell activities to share with all staff developed by the cell steering committee. We've seen that at the building levels, that there's the cell steering pieces that are being put together so that they're actionable and in place to help support teachers in the classroom. And then we'll continue to develop and enhance what we've done and what we're doing and to inform next steps, making sure that the social emotional learning is embedded in our curriculum and is producing what you saw here in terms of our students being leaders, having voice and choice, being agents of the things that they're learning about. So we want it to be student learning, student-centered, and student-empowered. Here we have some of our Bluebell students, again, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, just showcasing their musical talents with staff and students during the winter assembly. Wanted to make sure I highlighted this because social emotional learning is in the classroom and it's all over, the things that we're seeing here. I had the opportunity to follow a lot of our board meetings, and every time we came up, we saw the work of every different school. And that was really showcasing what social emotional learning looks like in action. I even recall the comment that our director of athletics said that it's also coming outside into the athletics, right? What we do. And that's it. That's social emotional learning in the classroom, on the fields, everywhere we go. It's social emotional at this nation. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I have lots of questions. So I'll start us off. First, the screen you had up before this about SEL Day. I assume the things below it are not the things we're doing on SEL Day. So what are we planning to do on SEL Day?
So it's an excellent question. Thank you. So what we're doing just happens to be that because we're doing social emotional learning as a part of practice that's been normalized, a lot of things are going to be featured, just lifted up that what we're doing currently. So we had our self-steering committee meeting and there were members who participated from various schools. And it just so happens that on March 10th, there are activities that are already planned. So there'll be a diverse listing of activities. We're going to try to capture them. Mrs. Rawlings, who's our communications coordinator, is also part of that team. And so staff will also help her to capture the pictures of the day. So there'll be various activities that we'll be doing. It isn't anything like a great departure from the work that we've been doing, to be sincere. It is just lifting up the social emotional learning that has been taking place and highlighting it on March 10th, because that's something that's going on nationwide. That's something that we do.
Well, great. I'll be looking for that on social media.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And then I saw on the LGE slide, you mentioned a sunshine committee. So what does this committee do?
So for the Sunshine Committee, from my understanding with Mrs. Konopka, what they do is they really try to focus on bringing sunshine into the school and just lifting up spirits for the staff and making sure that they're focusing on the social emotional learning aspects, building staff morale, making sure it's reinforced, doing things to help out in the community in terms of mirroring what students are doing, but also doing it for staff. So the Sunshine Committee is really taking up and lifting up a lot of the social emotional learning that we tend to do for students, and also making sure that we're doing that for staff intentionally.
Is that organized through the HSA, or is it just like a group of teachers that form this committee?
I would have to ask to see if it's just a group of teachers or if anyone else is involved. So I'll ask and I'll come back with an answer.
Well, I love the concept though.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And then, so at the middle school, you said they're donating fruits and veggies to Maddie Dixon. Is that, so I'm really concerned about our food waste in the cafeterias. I see a lot of it being thrown in the trash, prepackaged items that could easily be donated or used by another student. Is that the food that we're donating to Maddie Dixon is leftover items from lunch, or is this food the students are actually gathering?
So this is the food that students are not eating. So when they go to get their meal, sometimes they're asking you, they'll have them put apples and so forth, and the students will put it on the side. They'll get it. So they're not eating it. So they are making sure that anything that the students have not gotten and they're about to dispose of, instead of throwing it in the trash, instead they're putting it on the side here for donations. So these are food that is provided to all students, but if they're not eating it, instead of having them thrown away, which is something they observe and students observe too, they decided to disrupt that practice and have them instead set it aside so that we can donate it to others.
So I love this idea. I think we should look at it for our other schools also. So that's great. Do you know if the high school does it or just the middle school?
I just know that we highlighted it at the middle school, but I can inquire about the high school.
Okay, well, that's great. And then we talked about the invention convention, I think last week, but do you know what the actual, I don't think we knew what the actual inventions were that made it all the way. You said there were 2 middle school students?
There were 3. So the 2 did the Send a Smile app. Now, as far as the details of it, I'm not sure, but I can inquire. And the other was the Medi Tracker. And those 3 were 8th graders. And then there was a 3rd grader who also submitted something as well. And she was a finalist too. But I can dig in deeply to find out more information to share with you.
And we do have later in April 24th. I know that the middle school students we're working to coordinate for them to come to share with us firsthand what their inventions were and to really showcase their work.
Oh, that's exciting.
There's a rumor there's gonna be a breakout box out.
I love it. Well, I'm really excited to see what those were. And then my final question, so we have space, the high school does. So we've had the opportunity to meet with some students over the past couple of months, and it seems sort of like it's, you know, the teacher can decide like what the theme is in the morning, what they're going to discuss. Do we provide any sort of like list of suggested topics or anything to really help the teachers in guiding that conversation?
So initially, when Dr. Blair was here, she provided a list of different topics and so forth and programming for staff to use in the very beginning of that day for that space. As we have discussed as a self-steering committee, one thing that they would like to do, and I can speak to like kind of the vision of the high school going forward, is to also provide more input from staff and students to design some of those questions too. But yes, there are questions, choices, things that are prompted at the very beginning that have already been designed. So it's not extra work for the teacher to have to do it. They're already done. And so the hope and the practice is that we continue to do that going forward, but very curious and interested in probably getting some staff members to also contribute as well as some students.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, Joe?
Because on a previous slide, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but referencing professional learning or professional development, there was an acronym ACE. ACE. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
So for ACEs, it's just the adverse childhood experiences that students, young people, usually from an early age before 18, endure or experience. And so what we're looking at is what were some of the factors that cause ACEs, when we're looking at this in terms of children, which children are pretty susceptible to it. And then 3, as a staff, knowing that these are the students who are susceptible to it. This is what it is. What can we do about it? And so it was really helping them to understand what these adverse childhood experiences were, how they cause trauma, how that as learners, we can see what is needed to help them go further along, right? Even though this has been something that was something they endured, what can we do next as a staff? And so they provided practical steps. One thing that was important was developing the healthy relationships with students, making sure, again, that we focus on the social and emotional learning aspects of students, which is very important, giving them the opportunity to talk to us, like what happened and share. I think that was very important in terms of the social and emotional learning work that we're doing for us to have that level of awareness about what are adverse childhood experiences and how they can impact students and how they process learning, right? And so we talked a lot about the prefrontal cortex and how that has been hampered when students are exposed to that trauma.
Thanks. And I think it's great that the staff is getting trained on those kind of practices, and in particular, just more awareness about that and how that can impact the academic success of students in our school. I mean, one thing that most people don't really think about or realize is that the district as a whole has, I think, last I checked, 22% of our families that are low income. In addition, the past several years with COVID, I think there's a lot of people who've lost family members or people that they know to COVID. So a lot of our students experience some degree or some, maybe several traumas in their lives outside of school, and it can have a negative impact on their performance in school. And the more that our staff is like aware of it, attuned to it, and knows how to address and sort of mitigate it, I mean, I think the better that child will be, and obviously the better they'll do in school as well. So I think it's great that we're investing in that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. Great to learn about all of these wonderful things. Excellent work. 2 kind of thoughts or things to consider. An observation I noticed at the lower grades, there was a lot more like school-based kind of activities. And I get as you get further up in the grades in the secondary, especially high school, that might be harder, but at the high school, it was very kind of class oriented versus grade or school oriented, and from a belonging and a kind of inclusion kind of perspective, I would love to see something kind of be a little bit broader, possibly. And then, you know, you mentioned that in June, there's going to be a reflection, and reflection is so important, but what might also be great is kind of sharing of information, like the Sunshine Committee might be something we adapt across the board, or the donation of the unused food is wonderful. I mean, like food insecurity is kind of my, pain point. So what can we learn and share with each other would be like an amazing kind of output of this. So looking forward to how we kind of all grow and learn from this experience. Thank you for the work. This is really important.
Thank you. I appreciate your input.
Thanks, Epi. Other comments or questions? Rosetta or Deanne, do either of you have questions?
Actually, I do have a question. So I think the food, to bring the food to the Maddie Dixon is wonderful. And your presentation was excellent. I think that SEL is really important. One of the questions I have about the food is who ensures the safety of the food that gets distributed to Maddie Dixon once the children haven't eaten it?
It's a great question, one that I cannot answer at this time, but I will look into that. I know this is something that is provided by the middle school, and they started the project piece. So I will do due diligence and ask how that is processed and so forth. It's a great question. It's something that we do need to consider. I am aware of a couple of things that we discussed as a self-steering committee, so I'll make sure to get that information for the board.
Thank you so much. That's great.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks, Rosetta. Any other questions or comments? No? All right, well, thank you so much again for that presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
All right, so we'll move on now to our first public comment period. I'll remind speakers you have 3 minutes. We'll have 5 speakers on any particular topic, and it's not our practice to engage in dialogue with speakers. When appropriate, we will follow up with responses on our website. So we have 1 person registered in person for the first public comment period, and that's Christine English. Oh, and when you approach, please state your name and for your municipality. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Christine English. Whitby is my municipality. I just wanted to talk about the policy committee had been looking at the approval and the second reading of the board policy for 819, the suicide awareness, prevention and response. And I saw it in 17-10 in the agenda. And I just thought it was just really poignant right now. It's talking about the safety of the students, the safety, the welfare of the students, and being able to look at the actions and resources necessary to prevent the suicide action and promote mental well-being. I think this came to light in especially this past weekend. I was looking at some of the behavior of our community when we're talking with each other and talking about our students and our student safety and just the communication that we're having back and forth. I'm wondering if this policy could more clearly include not just students and staff, but if there could be more informational sessions. I know they've been offered about the social emotional learning aspects and keeping children safe, but just I saw that there was pieces involving the parents, but not clearly. And I know that's a little bit outside of what the school is responsible for, but I just noticed that in the community, people don't seem to be speaking to each other very kindly and considering our children are feeling badly, especially I have a special interest in the LGBTQ community because they're more than 4 times likely to commit suicide. And I'm very concerned in our community because each election that we have, it seems like of the school board, it seems like what has been coming up has been this book, and it's not about the book, but it's an LGBTQ theme, and then the transphobia and homophobia starts flowing in our groups, and I feel like it's going to affect our students. And it's very concerning to me, especially with the Moms for Liberty push that comes through every now and again. So I just think that it's important to focus on our students, educating the parents, getting more resources for the parents. I used to work inpatient mental health psych. I'm a mental health professional. And so many of the children couldn't talk to their parents about their gender identity or anything. And it just is so much, if we could bring the parents in and have them understand that if they can have one parent that's accepting, it would make such a difference. So I think they said only 1/3 of parents are accepting of their children's gender identity. And then the increase in the suicide risk, especially in our, I just wanted to, sorry, I was shocked by this number. Sorry. It was related to our minorities, people of color. So it was just, I think it was 45% higher than our white students. So it very much concerns me. I'll get that number.
Thank you for those comments, Christine. Katie, is there anyone registered online?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, well then we'll move on. Now we'll move on to the board president's report. I have no informational items this evening. Under action items, first I have to approve the approval of the Employee Relations Committee, which we discussed at our last meeting. Approval of school board public meeting dates for 23-24. Approval of reappointments of Judith Hill for a third term and Michelle Fleischer and Sally West Williams for a second term to the Wissahickon Valley Public Library Board of Directors. And approval of the revised 23-24 school calendar.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on any of these items?
Can you just remind me where, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
can you just remind me how we adjusted the calendar again?
For 23-24?
Yeah, please.
So we shifted the week from after Easter to the week prior
before.
to Easter. And Jim, did we do the day off before the election? Is that correct?
No, we couldn't make that work because of PSSA, so the additional day off is now added on to spring recess this year only. I want to make it clear, we don't normally have this long of a spring recess, but in this year, given the way the calendar falls, it will be the Monday after, so essentially a 10-day break.
Great. Deanne, you had a question?
I just wondered if you had any community feedback after the conversation last week regarding the calendar change, or anyone.
I didn't receive any community feedback following the meeting now.
Okay, I think it's early enough that people haven't, at least you can't book flights quite yet. So I'm hoping that everyone is good with this. I think it's the right thing for most of our families here. So.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, my comment is that based on our discussion last week, I mean, my sense is that by making the switch that we're going to vote on tonight, there's probably going to be some people that are unhappy about it. But I think whichever days you pick, there's going to be some that like it and some that don't like it. But in my view, it's a year out, so it's ample time, I think, for people to adjust their plans. And I think also importantly, it's more in line with what some of the surrounding districts are doing in terms of their holiday schedule too. So for those two reasons, I think it makes sense, and I'm in support of it for tonight.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion's passed. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to the superintendent report.
I have no report tonight.
Okay, assistant superintendent report.
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Board solicitor report. Michelle?
Hey, I have no informational items, but I have 2 action items, 2 settlement agreements. They're looking for a motion to approve 9 action items 9B1 and 9B2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion's passed. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
We'll now move on to our board secretary report. Wade?
Thank you. There is no informational item and the action items have not changed since the last meeting. So I'm requesting approval of action items 10B1 through 4.
So moved.
Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion's passed. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Can we move on to the board treasurer report?
Yes, thank you. There is no informational item and the action item has not changed. We were requesting acceptance and minuting of the treasurer report for January 31st, 2023 per document 11-1.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion's passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our HR report. Danielle?
Hi, good evening. Tonight, there are no informational items. Changes from last week's agenda can be found in bold. These include items in 12B1, a retirement, resignation, an appointment, a change of status, leaves of absence, and a few extracurricular changes. This evening, I am seeking approval for action items 12B1 through 4.
So moved. Second.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Our communications committee report, Zeppi.
Hi, yeah, we had a meeting on March 1st with the communications committee. And we talked about earlier start time, well, later start times or changing start times, excuse me. And we spent a bit of time discussing timelines as well as what are some of the things that we need to kind of understand prior to making some decisions. So I think we laid out to our administration some of the big topics that we need to kind of tackle first. And we will be meeting again, as you noted earlier, on the 21st to kind of see what information can easily be obtained, what, kind of additional resources we need or time we need or other things so that we can start looking at this a little bit more in the details. I also, along with Ronnie, attended, and Kristen Rowlands and Sue from our communications team, we all attended the RASNC meeting today at noon. It was an excellent meeting, very, very, very well attended. There was people from Radnor, Hadboro, Horsham, Lower Merion, Springford, Radnor, I said that, Methacton, Downington, Central Bucks. There was 2 speakers, Mr. Dan Beckfolds, or Doctor, and then Joe Daniele. And they talked about how they overcame transportation hurdles at Radnor. And they actually got into really a lot of detail, how they used Transbinder, how they kind of came up with Here Comes the Bus app, how they used a lot of technology that's available in the world right now to kind of help solve the transportation issue at Radnor. It was really, really enlightening, and they will be posting that PowerPoint that I'm happy to share on. And then, is that my time up? Lower Merion is going to be voting on a decision on their school start time on March 20th. So we'll be hearing soon what they're going to end up doing. They actually hired a communication engagement firm to help them through this process. And then lastly, their Springford is doing a self-care fair for the community, which I thought was really, really interesting. Rosetta, you might want to steal this one from them, where they're going to have a fair to talk about nutrition, health, mental health, all aspects of health. And they were seeking someone to help out with sleep hygiene. So they'll have booths on different kind of topics. So I thought that was a kind of really interesting idea. Like I've mentioned before, these are open to anyone. And in fact, it was not just school board and administration. Parents also joined this particular session. And then someone from Quakertown, which I didn't mention, their transportation person had joined the call. So it was a really great conversation. That's all for communications.
Thank you so much, Zeppi. Any comments or questions? No, I will use the opportunity. So as far as this project for school start times and the issues you just mentioned about, nutrition, health, wellness, I did talk to you about this, Zeppi, about possibly putting together a health, wellness, and safety committee. And I mentioned to Jim to talk to Jeff about putting some language together. I think that, this is a big project for communications. and I'm not sure how other board members feel, but I think this is something, health, wellness, and safety of our students is so important. And there's so many topics that we bring up regularly in this area. So I think this would be a good project for us to sort of shift to that committee if we approve such a committee. And also focus on some of these other topics, student well-being, mental health, physical health of our students, nutrition, all these topics. How do other board members feel about this type of committee?
Amy, can you explain how this would differ from what I believe exists now, a wellness committee?
So that's at the district level. And Rosetta, you can correct me, but that committee meets very infrequently, correct?
Yes, actually, I was going to tell you that I reached out to Kelly Hyman-McCloskey, and one of the questions that I had was, when would we be meeting again? And she let me know that that committee meets only twice a year. And I was a little concerned with that because I thought that just really isn't enough. And so I'm not sure, what authority that I have to be able to change that schedule. Or I think that your idea of starting another committee is probably, could we incorporate them? I'm not really sure how to proceed from here, but they only meet twice a year.
Thanks, Rosetta. Yeah, that was my understanding as well, as they meet very infrequently. When I sat on that committee, I recall it meeting very infrequently. So I think, and from what I recall also, they talked about a lot of things that were more surrounding staff, health, and wellness.
Right.
So this would be the whole district, students, staff, faculty. It would be focusing on health and wellness. I would think primarily of our students, but also of our staff and our faculty as well, overall. So that's how I feel it's going to differ, and we're going to hopefully meet a little bit more frequently than twice a year to focus on those very important issues.
Right. So I think that, I look to you for some guidance in how we can move that forward. But I'm really happy to be really involved in that.
Great. Thanks, Rosetta. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, just regarding the wellness committee. So it sounds like that's not a board committee. I think we have a representative from the board who participates in that committee, but it's not a committee that was formed by the board or driven or controlled by the board. So I think that's a major differentiator with what Amy is proposing here. Because if it's a board committee, then board members can set the agenda, the frequency of the meeting, and
Exactly.
what's under the scope of that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. Other questions or comments? Anyone else any thoughts on it?
Yeah. Amy? Oh, who's talking? Sorry.
You can go ahead, Dan. If you'll go
Okay.
next.
Sorry. It's really hard when you're on the camera to know if anyone's talking in the boardroom right away. Sorry. I was just going to say that Zephy and I feel like, and you, Amy, too, have been a part of all of these recent communication committee meetings and have been really passionate on these topics. So it's fine if you technically take it out of the communications, but I feel like we should follow that committee to continue our important work, because I think, we really are informed on the topic and are advocating for these issues. So that's something I would like to have you consider.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I know how important this is to both you, Zephy, and myself. So I would certainly like us to continue with that committee, and anyone else that would be interested in working on that committee. Certainly everyone is welcome to attend those meetings. Zephy, you had a comment?
No, I think it totally makes sense. And I think sleep hygiene is a part of health and wellness. So it's very logical to me for that to be the architecture of this. But I do think that perhaps what Joe is alluding to, we kind of create another group and have this be this kind of more frequent, kind of very engaged group that can kind of tackle some of these things, because these are complex, multifaceted issues that need a lot of kind of process thinking, et cetera. So I do kind of agree with Joe's kind of alluding to before that we almost kind of have to set the stage a little differently. But yes, it makes total sense from my perspective.
Great, thank you.
And I'd like to stay on.
Any other thoughts?
Well, one last thing. Later school start time, sleep hygiene, whatever, is obviously something that would fall under the scope of this proposed committee. But I mean, broader than that, we've talked a bunch about, the SEL related work. One of the speakers talked about LGBTQ, rights and our student population. So I think more and more there are a number of these things and topics related to student health and well-being that don't necessarily have a clean home in any of our current committees. It's not necessary. I guess it's part, like SEL is kind of like curriculum and it's embedded in the curriculum, but it's not just curriculum, right? The later school start times, there was a communication component, but it's not just about communication. And there's other things too, I'm sure, that have been coming up, the mental health supports and all that stuff that come up frequently. So, it seems like a pretty decent idea to have a committee that can specifically focus on digging into those issues more deeply and more regularly.
Great, thank you. I'm glad the board supports this idea. So Jim, yeah, if we could have that maybe for our next meeting. Great, thank you. All right, was there anything else on communications? Is that it, Zeppy?
No, that was it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, we'll move on now to our curriculum and technology committee. Ronnie?
Okay, there are no informational items. There are 6 action items that we reviewed at the work session. So we're looking for approval for items 14B1 through 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion's passed. Thank you. Move on now to our facilities and transportation committee. Joe?
Thank you. There are no informational items this evening, and the 6 action items up for vote tonight were all discussed and reviewed at last week's work session, and they remain unchanged with the exception of a little typo on 15B1 saying or specifying that it's the sale of surplus computers and equipment to GDI trade. So with that, I'm asking for approval for action items 15B1 through 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
I have a comment, Amy.
Oh, you do?
Real quick.
Sorry, Dean.
Sorry, that's okay. I just wanted to comment that, I don't take this vote on the turf fields lightly. It is a expensive project. And for a while, I wasn't really sure that I was in favor of it. But, after hearing, I am a fan of sports and I know how important they are in mental health. And after hearing from, especially the WRA person that came last week and knowing how many of our community kids will be able to use those fields, that made me just think, okay, that's really important for our community. As a member of the aquatics program in our community, I'm so grateful for our wonderful facility that we have. And so it's nice to be able to have that in our community. One question I did quickly have for Wade regarding this is, Wade, as this would probably bring more activities to the high school parking lot for use of the turf fields, would you foresee this inhibiting other facility uses such as the stadium or the natatorium?
Thank you, Deanna. It's a great question. I don't think so, just because of the location of the fields versus the location of the assets that you mentioned. There's different parking lots that would be accessible to probably both assets, so I think we would be okay. But I can certainly relay that concern to Jim Cairns, the athletic director, in case we do run into problems so that we can take care of it through scheduling. So thank you.
Yeah, scheduling and just making sure that there's other, that maybe this activity is directed to park at the middle school, or just making sure that everyone has an opportunity to use all our facilities and that there's not too many conflicts that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Deanne. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion's passed. Thank
you.
All right, we'll move on now to our finance committee report. David?
Thanks, Amy. We have no informational items tonight, except to remind everyone that there is a finance committee meeting next Tuesday. We have 5 action items, 4 of which were discussed last week and haven't changed. We have one, the 5th is a new item. I'm going to ask Mr. Coleman to present that, please.
Thank you very much. So item 5 was added. It's really a signaling that this is something that we're going to be pursuing and putting on the front burner. So the wording is the approval to authorize the allocation of up to $250,000 from the capital project fund to improve safety for walkers from the corner of Knight Road and Houston Road to the corner of Mount Pleasant Road and Knight Road, including consideration of fencing, cutting of trees to create better lines of vision, sidewalk extensions, pedestrian crosswalk system signage with the intent of improvement by the 2023-24 school year. So in and of itself, this is really just sending a signal from the board to the community, or from the board to the administration as well, that there's support for these items to be developed. And we are already working towards bringing some of these items back to the board so that we can put them on the front burner and make improvements, hopefully in the short term. So that's what this motion does.
Great, thank you, David and Wade. Were there any questions? Or actually, I guess we have to have a motion first, sorry.
I was going to ask for a motion for action items 16B1 through 5.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
Just one comment regarding this last one, 16B5. It's in bold because we didn't have an opportunity to discuss it at last week's meeting. I think between last meeting and now, there was an incident on one of the nearby roads with the students. And I think this sort of tapped into what had been like ongoing concerns about just like pedestrian safety on some of the roads nearby some of our schools, this one in particular. And I think because of that incident that happened between last meeting and this one, sort of spurred the need or the interest of myself and I think some others to try to take some quick action to try to make things better in the near term, while we look for maybe bigger or more comprehensive or longer term solutions with the different townships and municipalities to partner on.
Thank you, Joe. Other questions or comments?
No, similar.
Rosetta, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Deanne.
I just wanted to thank you for setting this money aside. This is something I've been talking about, and I did in fact make clear that I would not vote for a budget this year that did not include something for the safety of walkers, because it is something that's so important to me. I walk my kids to school every day, and I see a lot of crazy things. And I don't think that fencing is the solution necessarily, but that's not for me to decide. What I think we need to do is have a meeting with maybe some of the board administration, Lower Gwinnett Police, Ambler Police, maybe some parents who have been voicing their concerns for years, to come together and say, what are some solutions that we can come up with that keep our kids safe, but also create really walkable solutions for them. That's my goal, and I'm really grateful for this money. I'm sad that it took an incident to get there, but I am really grateful, and I think it's something we really need to, we put it into the wellness and safety category. We can talk about it in that committee, but I really think it should be a meeting that involves the local municipalities and, like I said, other parents who have been concerned about this for their safety as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Zephy, you had a comment?
So similar with Deanne, but do want to echo that I'm appreciative that we did take swift action. It was unfortunate that an incident caused the shining of light on this, but appreciate that we took action, between last week and this week to kind of make this a priority, because we definitely want safety to be a priority. So thank you.
Yep.
Amy, would I be able to coordinate a said meeting? Like, I don't know under whose authority that is, but could I invite, the Lower Gwinnett and Ambler police chiefs and invite some local parents that I know are LG walkers? I don't have as many connections to high school, middle school, but is there some way that we can have just a conversation about ideas about what we can do? And can we do that quickly? Or who is in charge of that? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm asking, I'll do it. What's that?
Yeah, I'll work with Jim and see if we can coordinate something.
Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
Of course. And Rosetta, did you have a comment?
No, but I would
Okay.
like to be involved in that as well, because I know that there's a lot of neighbors in my neighborhood who are really, because of the walking neighborhood, who are really concerned with that. So I'm willing to help out.
Great, thank you. All right, any other, yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Just curious as to whether or not there have been any concerns raised at the other schools as well, or is everything seemed to be more specific to Laura Gwinnett?
So the answer is there are always concerns that are raised, but it's different issues at different schools. Bluebell and Shady Grove, we periodically have people who want to cross the skip back, and they want, different facility changes. This is the only one that's sort of uniquely a walking issue to primarily the elementary school, but also would affect middle school and high school kids. And I think it's more concentrated. I think it is a little bit different. I could make a list of the other ones that I've have heard, and send it to the board just so you're aware of them.
Thanks, Wade. I would add too, that if the committee is going to be looking at this, that they do it more holistically and also consider the other schools and have the same attention as well. But if Laura Gwinnett obviously has more challenges, that should be a priority, but we should also look at it more holistically. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. In meeting with the principal at Shady Grove this week, he did mention about the students crossing over skip back, and he informed me that's state roads, so there's not really much, I guess, we can do about that. Is that true?
Yes, I have a personal opinion that I don't really want to encourage people walking across skip back. I am not certain that there'd be a safe way for that to be done. And I think the only truthfully safe way would be outside of the school's purview, which is if an individual parent wants to make sure that their child walks safely across together. But I'm, that was going to be one of the ones I was going to provide to Mr. Badger, but I'm not convinced that that's something that we would put on the list and say, how can we make that safer, as opposed to maybe just have a discussion about it so that it's not just my opinion.
That makes sense. Thanks, Wade. All right, were there any other comments or questions?
Wade, do you know about any grants for pedestrian bridges that maybe the state would do over a state road that they know is adjacent to a school, perhaps? Is that something that ever happens?
I've never seen one, but that's not really our business. So I'm sure that if, we talk to people, maybe there are some. I've never heard of one.
Would that be like a Whitpain Township issue potentially that those supervisors might look into?
Yeah, it probably would be. I think also, I think this would be something like Mr. Badger noted, that this would be holistically looked at.
Great, thank you again. All right, there's no other comments or questions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion's passed. Thank you. Policy Committee report. Marshall, you have a lot of people this week. We're here for your report.
I do, thank you. And with that in mind, there are no informational items to present tonight. However, I would like to note that we do have our next meeting next Monday, March 13th at 7 p.m. By way of Zoom. Tonight, we do have action items to be voted upon. It is B1 through 17, 1 through 15. And in a moment, I'm going to ask for a vote in that regard. However, before I do that, I would like to just make a comment because we actually had a comment tonight regarding policy, and we rarely, if ever, have that. So thank you to one of our parents, Ms. English, for bringing it up. And I think it's important to note, because what you saw tonight and what you're seeing as we discuss these issues is this is our policy committee in motion, our policies in motion. And you brought up a very interesting point by noting specific policies such as the suicide awareness, prevention and response policy, which is contained in what we're going to vote on tonight. This is the 800 series that we've been going over regarding operations. And I think it talks about more of a larger aspect here than just one particular policy. We're talking about, as you can see through a lot of our different reports tonight, we're talking about health and safety and wellness of our of our students, whether it's for those who are walking or whether it's suicide prevention. It's a larger issue. And it sort of rolls into each and every one of our reports and each and every one of the issues that we review, debate, and decide upon. This particular policy that you brought up tonight is one that is to develop, coordinate, and implement appropriate programs to ensure that we tackle the threat of either threat or attempt of suicide, which again goes to our health and wellness of all of our children within the community. But like all of our policies, it's a living, breathing thing. What the policy that we're going to vote on tonight does is it allows us to implement the things we need to do. So when you raise the issue, or anyone raises the issue of making it better, implementing new, additional, or advanced policies or procedures, or bringing in outside people to do so, what this does is this particular policy, and I'm talking about it because you brought it up specifically, is it allows us to go to our superintendent or authorized designees to develop the appropriate procedures in order to implement each and every policy, including this one. So what I would simply say to you and everybody else who's watching or comes to a meeting, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about our policies and how we implement them, let us know. Because all this does is these policies lay the groundwork for how we operate. But within that, we invite all kinds of debate, all kinds of discussion to figure out how we can make things better. And if anybody does, if they have a question, a comment, a concern, or criticism, let us know, because then we can tailor our policies and procedures to what is in the best interest of our kids, which is, I think, what we all want, their health, wellness, and well-being more than anything. So with that in mind, I am going to ask for a vote tonight to approve 17B1 through 15 regarding the 800 series regarding operations.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
So with that, Marshall, I mean, Christine brought up a really good point before. Would there be an opportunity to revisit this policy? Because when you look at the procedures for parental involvement, you know, is there something we could relook at that at a later time so that we could build further upon some of the thinking here?
Well, I think your point is well taken. It's not revisiting this and changing this policy. This policy is what puts everything in place for us to do what we need to implement programs and things that we need to do. This particular policy, developed in 2015, was updated to note the delegation of authority, and it is backed up by the approval of the appropriate legislation by our solicitor. So all this policy does, it puts in place what we're allowed to do in terms of making sure we do the right policies. And if there are things we need to do to implement them appropriately, absolutely. Of course, if we want to implement something specifically within this policy, absolutely. And I don't know that you necessarily need to tweak the policy. The policy is in place. It'll allow us to come up with a particular program or idea or concept that we'd like to implement within the policy.
Yeah, to sort of extend on what Marshall's saying is that generally speaking, the policies should outline the board's intent of what we're trying to accomplish with the policy, but then the superintendent and the administrative team then will, you know, actually implement it, right? Faithfully to the intent of the policy. The policy as written, and policies in general, I think, are intended to be more high level and broad, because they're not intended to like change very frequently, because our overall intent shouldn't change very frequently. How we actually go about doing it, best in alignment with the policy, may adjust and adapt over time. But generally speaking, policies are meant to be more high level and more, you know, high level intent. So within the intent of the suicide prevention piece, it talks about having like a program that's going to educate school personnel and students on actions and resources necessary to prevent suicide and promote mental well-being. I think by design, it's broad and open, and it's not specific, and that gives them flexibility. If within that, you know, what are the things we need to, if we find like a source of like suicide ideation thoughts or actions, is, gender identity issues or acceptance or LGBTQ related issues, then in order to comply with the policy, we should have support and services that try to educate folks and, support those needs, right? But there could be other things as well, right? But it's all under the general umbrella of trying to prevent suicide and promote mental well-being of our students. So I think the policy as written is fine and okay. It's more about how Jim and the team go about trying to implement that policy. What are the specific programs and I guess areas that they're looking to try to emphasize in whatever program they want to put in place in support of this policy.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. The motion's passed.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to our Racial Equity Oversight Committee. Paul.
Thanks, Amy. There's no report this evening other than to remind everyone that the next meeting is March 20th at 7 p.m. It is virtual and all are encouraged to attend.
Great, thank you, Paul. Were there any questions this evening for the REACT Committee? All right, thank you again. All right, we'll now move on to our report of board representatives, extracurricular. Marshall.
I have nothing to report tonight. As I said at the last meeting, we have an upcoming meeting and I'm sure I'll have lots to talk about once we have our meeting.
Great, thank you. And I reported last week on the NCIU Board of Directors and Legislative Committee. North Malco, Ronnie or Zeppi?
We did our first review of budgets for North Montco, and there's going to be a subsequent meeting on March 13th because they are above Act 3. I'm saying it wrong, but they're
Act 1.
Act 1. Their budget's above, so quite a few members had questions. So we're having an additional meeting on March 13th. And I believe the vote is scheduled. No, it's not scheduled for March 20th. I think March 20th is when we discuss what's going to come to each of the school, to each district. So that's being finalized right now, which I'm sure you all, Wade's nodding his head. So we spent the majority of the time talking about budget. Yay.
I actually have a question about that. So, and maybe Wade can answer this better. How is their budget established? Is it just the contributions from the districts that are members? Do they also receive state and federal funding? Because they have to stay within Act 1. I assume they don't tax, right? So how are they getting their funds?
So theoretically, I don't think they have a charter that says they actually have to stay within Act 1. I think it would be the individual people who say, are you able to because, we would like you to. And yes, I think they receive considerable state and federal funding, just like we do. I can get you those numbers.
Great, thanks, Wade.
And one additional kind of caveat to that, we do pay a percentage based on our participation. So it's not like divided by 5, it's like divided by head count. So Wissahickon actually has the least amount of students who go to North Montco. So we actually are the least contributors from an overall number perspective.
That's exactly right. But also, in addition to that, a district's contribution could go up higher percentage wise than others because it's based on a rolling 5-year enrollment. And so even though we have the lowest enrollment, but if ours went up percentage wise more than a different district, our contribution, while much smaller than everybody else's, because our overall enrollment is smaller, could go up percentage wise more than theirs because of the difference in the 5-year average enrollment.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Was there anything else to report on, Stephanie, from the meeting?
Nothing else. Everything was just regular business.
Okay. All right. Were there any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on next to PSBA liaison. Dan?
Yep. Hello. So last meeting, I just said I would give a short report on the 2023 State of Education. And I think it's fascinating. I don't know if anyone got to take a look at it, but just a couple of highlights. Challenges that districts face, 71% said that They have student mental health issues, as well as staffing shortages. That's their biggest issue. 92% reported sub-teacher and instructional aides, bus drivers, and special education teachers as major staffing issues. The top budget issues for districts are mandatory charter school payments, as well as special education costs, rising pension costs, and inadequate state funding. Pennsylvania has 1.7 million kids in public school. 90% of PA kids attend a public high school, or public school rather. Our special education population continues to grow. 18% of public school students receive special education programming and services. This represents over 16% increase in the last 13 years, while enrollment is down 6%. So there is quite a jump in that. In terms of budgeting, 73% of districts say they are raising property taxes to meet these needs. And 33% are saying they're postponing needed building renovations and additions because of budgeting issues. 97% of districts also report inflation has affected their budget significantly. Most schools do rely on local revenues because PA is 43rd in this country in share of education funding. PA is 10th in the country in spending per student. We spend $17,172 a student, and 33% of that goes to pension costs. In terms of growth and expenses, I found this fascinating. From 2010 to 2020, pension costs increased 542%, charter school costs 176%, and then inflation is considered 20% at this point from then. The mandated expenses are outpacing revenues. So basically in 2010 and 2020, schools are receiving just about the same state and federal funding for special education, while the actual costs have nearly doubled. So that tells you the financial predicament that a lot of districts are in. The top instructional challenge, 81% of districts said that student mental health is, and then infrastructure. 71% of respondents say that buildings are in major need of repair replacement. I think Wissahickon is really lucky in that regard. I feel like we do a good job of taking care of our buildings. And yeah, that's it. It's a really, I think it's like 40 pages, but it's a really fascinating report. If anyone wants to take a look at it, I could send it over.
Yeah, please share that, Deanne. And
Will do.
I also wanted to ask, with the Day of Action coming up, have they put out yet their list of suggested discussion topics? Like last time, I remember unfunded mandates was something I know you and I went around talking to everyone about. Are there other topics? So there's
I haven't seen anything yet, although I know there's a Zoom meeting the night before on the 17th, and I assume they're going to sort of brief us on what they think some talking points would be. Although I think either Danielle or Jim had sent over a couple of things from the union that they wanted to mention as well. So yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. I haven't seen anything like that, Amy, no.
And I'm not sure what other board members are participating in that Day of Action, but maybe if you could share out any topics that you do receive. Like I found that very helpful from PSBA to get that list of suggested topics to kind of guide conversations.
All right.
So it'd be great to get that in advance.
All right, so I'll send the report and then I'll look if there's any suggested topics yet. Okay.
Great. Thanks so much, Deanne. Any other questions or comments? All right, then we'll move on next to Health and Wellness Committee, but I think I know what your report is, Rosetta.
Yeah, there's really no report. I'm still waiting to hear about when this spring meeting is going to happen. And I'm really interested in a board committee for health and wellness. I think that we really need it.
Agreed. Thanks, Rosetta. All right. And I guess there were no comments or questions on that. We'll move on now to our second public comment period. Again, we allow a maximum of 5 speakers on any particular topic. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And again, note it's not the board's practice to engage in dialogue with speakers. When appropriate, we will post a response on the website. Please, when you approach the podium or if you're online, state your name and your municipality of residence. All right, we have 2 registered in person. We had Christine last time, so we'll start with Kate this time.
So my name's Kate. I am a student at WMS and I am part of the LGBTQ+ community. And there is a lot of, well, it's not like upfront prejudice or adversity, but when we can't really, like when we're not looking or when our backs are turned and we just overhear some sort of strain of conversation in the hallway, and then it like hurts because they don't understand. They're talking about how like all gay people are either pedophiles, they're using the F slur with no like reparations whatsoever. And it hurts because they're doing it when no one can see or hear them, and then no one knows that they're doing it, and you can't call them out on it because it's hidden. And the teachers don't know because they're not doing it in front of them. So it's small, it's hidden, but it's still there. And how it feels to be hated like that is like being hated for something about you that you cannot change, that is permanent. It's a permanent trait or attribute of yours, and you feel hated for it, and you like are hurt, and you sometimes it goes to the point where you might want to hurt yourself or even kill yourself in some ways. And I've known people who've been almost pushed to that limit, and it hurts knowing that this is happening while people aren't looking and they're being sneaky about it, and it's not happening for people. Sorry, people don't think it's happening, but it is. It's happening all around almost constantly. And today, like this day, I found like we put up posters of LGBTQ support to make people of the LGBTQ community feel fit in and at home in the WMS community. I found one of them ripped off the wall. Tape was ripped off, pieces, like there was corners of paper gone. And it was sitting there on the floor, and I had to tape it back up. Yeah, that's the end of my statement.
Thank you so much. And we don't typically engage in dialogue with speakers, but I do want to really thank you for coming forward and speaking with us this evening. I know how hard it is to speak in a room of adults to begin with, but to come and talk about topics so sensitive and important to you, I really, really appreciate you doing that and commend you for being able to do that. Thank you. And Christine, did you also want to speak? Sure.
I'm sorry, it's not related to what I was talking about earlier about suicide or anything. I just wanted to actually commend, I know that there are students who've experienced the things that Kate's talking about, but we as a couple, my wife and I, we've lived here in the community since 2000, well, this specific community since 2004. Our children have gone, we have another child in 9th grade also, and then Kate in 8th grade. And they have been treated by the teachers just so amazingly, almost like they're their own family. And we, before we knew our children were in the queer community, I mean, obviously Julie and I are married, so we are a same-sex couple, everybody treats us very well. So I think that's why it's been such a shock in the past couple of years to see the things that I see on parent sites here, because I'm surprised. Just like, because it feels like a very safe community, and we have so many teachers that are just so smart and like wise about social emotional issues, and they're not advocating, okay, be part of the LGBT community. Like that's the piece that really bothers me. Nobody's being indoctrinated. It's nothing like that. That doesn't happen. Like it's not the case. They're just loving, supportive adults, and that's what our kids need. And my kids, even though they have us and we support them and we give them what they need at home, if they need therapy, we'll get them therapy. Anything they need, we'll do. The teachers would do anything here. And that's why we say, like, it's just such a wonderful support. They'll message us to say, you know, I noticed Kate had a hard day, or this happened. When Kate, I guess it was end of 11 into 12 years old, came to us and told us what was happening, I reached out to the teachers and they helped us with the bathrooms. Like a parent's biggest concern is my child going to be hurt? They're just saying like, let's walk around, let's assure you. They're just, Principal Bauer like, was actually more open to talking about what we should do than I would have ever thought. There was not a skip beat. Like, it just was like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And it's just it's just a beautiful experience, and we're just lucky. That's all. So that's why I'm passionate about it. I just think you do a great job. So not to downplay what she's saying, because I don't know what her friends go through, but so thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Christine. Katie, is there anyone registered online?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Okay, then we'll move on from our comment period. I'll move on to board comments. Would any of my fellow board members like to say anything this evening? Marshall, go ahead.
Thank you. We oftentimes hear from members of our community in the form of parents. We hear grandparents, we hear adults who have issues, comments, concerns, criticisms, but it's not very often that we hear from our students. And that's not an easy thing to do. So Kate, I just want to say to you that what you did is courageous, it's strong, and it's you. And that's all we want from you and every one of your peers in this school district. It's not always easy, but when people like you, whether you're a leader or simply someone who wants to tell us what they're feeling, well, that's what this school district is all about. And we can all do better. So when you tell us that there are things of concern to you that bother you, that don't make you feel good, we take that to heart because we want everybody, no matter who they are, what they think, what they feel, to be part of this community. And we will always try to do better to make sure that everybody who is associated with Wissahickon feels part of that community. And I promise you that we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Marshall. Jeff?
I just wanted to let everyone know, I don't know if Guys and Dolls is still showing, but my wife and I had the opportunity, and I know Amy was there, I know Zeppi was there, and Zeppi's daughter, I believe, is in the production. But we were at the performance of Guys and Dolls on Friday at the high school, and it was fantastic. I was like blown away at the talent of our students. I mean, the singing talent was amazing. But you could tell that the kids put so much time and energy and effort in making a wonderful performance, and even just the production design with the sets and the staging, the lighting and the crew. Everything was amazing and fantastic, and it was a great showcase of our kids' talents and the fruits of their hard work. So if it's still showing, I don't even know if it's showing this weekend, but it's not. Okay, well, catch it next year. But it was fantastic, and we had a great time. And for all those who attended, I'm sure you had a great time as well.
Yeah, I would echo that. It was amazing. And yeah, I'm also thankful that Joe and his wife were able to put up with my kids for the whole production. They were a little out of control, but they actually loved it so much. We went back a second night. So it was just amazing. So yeah, great job by the drama club. Other comments, questions? Nothing. Okay. All right. So we have a motion to adjourn. All
Second.
right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Right. Great.